Tasya Kayana Gurana.
I first saw Srila Prabhupada in 1966, his beginning days at 26 Second Avenue. And he impressed me like a Buddha figure. He was wearing just a bare chest and a top piece. And I didn't know anything about Vedic gurus, but he looked like a Buddha. So, but I did know, or had an attraction for Eastern gurus. Fortunately, I never had any guru, but so what I first saw was not him, but I saw a little piece of paper in the window that said yoga classes on Bhagavad Gita, transcendental sound vibration, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And so by myself, I decided to go and see him. And I was a loner. I came to him alone. Some other groups, there's a Mott Street Boys, they came together. Umapati, Kirtanananda, and Hayagriva, yeah. And Prabhupada would also remember the past. As the years went by, he would remember those early days. And he said, "Oh, you three came together." And then he would say to me, "Oh, but you came alone." And so I went into the storefront alone one night to attend a class, and I was shy. But one of the young men turned to me, Ray Rama, his name was Raymond. He said, "What's your name?" I said, "Steve." And so he welcomed me. And then he said, "The Swami will be out in a few minutes." There was all straw mats on the floor, and a straw mat for the Swami too. That's all he had, no chair. So then he came out, and he wore white slippers with pointy fronts to them, like bathing slippers. I've never seen any slippers like that since then. He stepped out of those slippers, and they're like genie slippers, and sat down on the straw mat, exact same level as us, and looked around, and then began to chant it, and very slowly play with the cartels. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. We have some very early tapes of those vintage kirtans. So I was very impressed by the kirtan and by him personally. I had trouble with his speech, but still I was impressed by him. He was the first Indian teacher I came across, so the gravity meaning the silence and the seriousness, no nonsense appearance, and the elderliness. All these things I liked very much. Grandfatherliness. The first question I asked him was, he had a protocol of you could ask a question afterwards, so I asked, "Is there freedom from misery?" And I asked him that because I had read it in a book by Van Gogh's letters to his brother, Dear Theo, and that he said there's no freedom from misery. Misery is eternal. And he said, no, there's no freedom from misery. He said, you can break your arm and go to the hospital and come out, and then you'll break another limb. So there's no relief from misery, and even at the end of this body, you'll take another body. He said, but there is relief if you get liberated and not have to come back from the material world. That's the only way there's relief from misery, by this chanting of Hare Krishna. So that was my first question I had asked based on that reference I read. And then I asked a personal version of it up in his room alone when I was thinking of my own bad habits and my attempt to get relieved of them. I said, Swamiji, I was a little more advanced than to talk to him alone, one-to-one. I said, is there a stage in advancement where you can reach a point where you don't fall down again? And he said, yes. That's all he just said. And I was very, very pleased to hear that. And actually, personally, from the first night I went in and saw him, I did break all my habits, or they went away by themselves. So that's, he and the chanting had powerful effect on me. I had a thing that I wanted to get special attention, and I wouldn't go forward unless I was given it. So I knew that he had Sunday morning feasts, and I also knew that he had morning classes as well as he had morning classes every day, and Monday, Wednesday, and evening. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in the evening. But I didn't attend the morning classes because nobody invited me. And they had Sunday feasts and nobody invited me. So I didn't go. But then one day I was sitting, after the lecture, I was sitting on the curb outside, and he waved me in, or he got somebody to bring me in, and he said, you know, we have Sunday feasts. He said, would you like to come to the Sunday feast? I said, yes. He said, you can come too, you're invited. So I started going to them. And then some of the other guys told me that I could go to the morning classes too. But I was very slow unless I was invited. And that's where that exchange came up between us, that I didn't go to the first initiation because nobody asked me to get initiated. The first initiation was so lackadaisical that people went and got initiated without even seriously considering whether they were going to follow the 4 rules. But I didn't think I was ready to get initiated. I wanted to stay independent. So the first initiation was on Janmashtami, and I stayed home. But I was typing for him. So the day after Janmashtami, I showed up at his door with some typing that I had done. And he said, oh, you did not come for initiation yesterday. And I said, no, but I did some typing. I gave him the typing, and he gave me some grapes. And then there was an exchange going on the telephone for a marriage that he was going to have arranged between Mukunda and Janaki. And he hung up the phone, and he said, you're invited to come to this marriage. You can come. And I said, thank you. And I went to the marriage, and then I was sorry that I had not gotten initiated, so I asked him on another occasion, another day, could I get initiated on the next occasion? He said, well, you'll have to be a strict vegetarian. I said, I already am. And so he said, yes, then you can be initiated. And so it was all, what I wanted to go back was when I brought those papers, and he saw this reluctance on my part not to get initiated, not to go to the morning class, not to go to the feast, unless I got invited. It was like a defect on my part. So he said important words to me. He said, I will love you if you will love me. So that was a big change in my part. He was exposing that I wasn't loving him, but I was expecting him to always be loving me. And I thought, why am I holding back my love for him? Something I dislike about his face or his way of talking or something. I'm not loving him, but I'm expecting him to pour all this love on me. So I just I looked at all the ugliness inside myself of why I might not be loving the Swami, and I decided that I should just kick it out. I should love him. And then he said, if you do that, then I'll love you. But it's a two-way street. So that was a big barrier. He exposed that.
He more or less read your heart and
Yeah.
your mind.
Yeah. That would be a good life lesson that in any relationship, certainly with the spiritual master or with any spiritual relationship, a husband and wife or with anything, you have to love the other person in order if you want to be loved.
Excellent. Excellent.
So that really broke a lot of ice, and from then on, I didn't have to be so much invited to things. I stepped forward more. He was teaching from Dr. Radhakrishnan's Bhagavad Gita himself, and some of us went out and bought copies of it too. He said that the translation is 98% good. Don't read the purport at all. It's contaminating. But you can read the English out loud. We had classes, so he would say, Raymond, read 8.7, read the translation. So that we would read the translation and consider it bona fide, that book. And then we had his Srimad Bhagavatams. We didn't use them in any consecutive order. They were just there to read and grasp. It's funny, we didn't study the Srimad Bhagavatam, as I remember it. It's not that everyone had the money to buy them. I bought them. I remember asking about when you get initiated, is your karma stopped? And he said, yes, it's like the fan the electric fan is rotating, but on initiation, the plug is pulled out, and it may take a little time that rotations are going, but there's really no more karma. So questions like that, I'd ask them. I was upset, and with tears in my eyes, I went to him and said, my father said, if I continue to have anything to do with this movement. They won't have anything to do with me. And he saw me, my teary state, and he just looked at me, and he had a kind of twinkling eyes. His eyes were kind of twinkling, and he was kind of saying, "Well, that's all right." So he was. I know he's dealt with his students in different ways, encouraged them to keep up good relations with their parents, but with me, he didn't do that. He just kind of smiled and more or less said, "Let it go." And then not long after that, I wrote him a letter. "Are you my real father?" He said, "Yes. The other relationship is material and transitory. I am your real father." So I never had any problem with that. My only problem was to be careful not to give extreme advice to students in Krishna consciousness that my way was their way. I had to realize that relationships could be patched up, and parents and their children could come together in Krishna consciousness. But I did tell them what happened to me and what happened to Narada Muni. And you shouldn't waste too much time on it, and don't go walking into the face of blasphemy every time you go home and have it, Prabhupada, that such and such Swami, that, I couldn't stand that. Tamal Krishna Maharaj, when he was close to his mother up until the end, but he had a habit of writing to his mother, and when he became a sannyasi, he wondered if he should keep it up frequently. And Prabhupada said to him, "Do you wish to make your mother a special object of your mercy?" And so he was putting it to him there's a lot of people you have to save in this world in limited time. I'm not going to give you an order that you should keep writing to your mother every week. You're a sannyasi now. If you do, however, want to make her a special object of your mercy, you can do that. And so he kind of put it as a burden on his shoulder to think about. And he stopped writing to her so often. But they did remain close. In like the Sunday feasts that he served, with his bare feet, just passing by, just like you might see nowadays in India, a boy serving you. So he would walk past the rows of the devotees with his lotus feet, serving out the portions to everyone, the portions that he had cooked, and was serving. And he asked me, do you want the pushpana rice or the regular rice? And I would take my choice, and then he would put the one or the other on my plate. And then he would go back and get some other preparation and put it on each person's plate. At the same time we were allowing it, I was thinking that his feet were very worshipable, but still we didn't jump up and say, no, don't you do it. I remember one time when I worked at the welfare office, and they said I had to stay an hour late, so that I couldn't go for lunch. Lunch was a real treat in his room with about 12 devotees, and he sat amidst us, and So that meant I couldn't go that day. I wasn't initiated yet. I phoned his place and I got him on the phone. I said, Swamiji, this is Steve. Do you remember? Do you know who I am? He said, yes. I said, I can't come to lunch today. I have to stay in an extra hour to work. Could you save me a plate? He said, all right, we can. So I came there instead of 12, I came there at 1. And everything was finished. Everyone was gone and the plates were washed. And he used to have the rug rolled back. So the rug was rolled back, but there was one place there. He said, sit down. And I sat down, and then he brought out a plate and placed it down, and then he stood there a moment while he put the plate there. And then automatically, as the plate was there, I bowed down at his feet. So that was one time, maybe the first time I think I bowed down at his feet. He said, yes. So gradually then Gargamuni asked a question. He said, if I don't feel like bowing down when the others bow down, should I still do it? That's a famous question. What is it? Prabhupada said, yes, you should.
By bowing down, you'll feel like...
By bowing down, you'll feel like doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So how it became like a more established thing, I can't quite remember. Kirtananda's going to India with Prabhupada had something to do with it when he came back. I remember some boys really getting rebellious when it really started, and they're quitting. They didn't like it. I remember that we interviewed one fellow for the Prabhupada Lilamrita, and he said, when that bowing down started, he said, I knew I had to get out of here. He said, I didn't want any part of this, a movement with bowing down before the Guru. So it was noticed as a big difference. People would, and at programs, people would ask that question too. Why is everyone bowing down to you? An outsider would say, and Prabhupada would say there's some different things. They are wondering why you are not bowing down. You must, then there's an extended one. You must bow down to someone. Everyone has to bow down to someone. Why? I don't bow down to anyone. Oh yes, you do. Then Prabhupada would say, do you bow down to old age? No, I don't. Yes, you do. But you must bow down to someone. Why not bow down to a guru, an advanced person? Stubborn persons, they couldn't get the idea that if they bow down to the right person, they would not have to bow down to all this birth, death, disease, and old age. He gave me some business instructions, chastised me. One day I was in Mayapur, and he sent me to Calcutta to do something in the bank. And they wouldn't give me what I asked for. So I forget what it was, but I couldn't get it done. So I came back, having failed to get it. So he said, what you failed to do is you should have gotten them to write down in paper why they refused to do what you asked them to do. He said, so now we have nothing. He said, you're a complete failure. He said, if you had gotten them to write down why this man wouldn't get it for you, or why his supervisor wouldn't give it for you. Then we would have had something. So I thought how smart that was of him to get something. You know, if you get refused, at least get in writing why you were refused. That was sort of like Indian smart business thinking that a naive American kid didn't think of. I just got turned away into the street with nothing. If I had a piece of paper, it would have been at least the start of upper investigations. That happened to me once before too, in Indian dealings. At least get something written down. He put me into tears sometimes though. And then he put me into tears and waited for me to come out with a solution. Not just sit there and cry. There was a time when I sent a letter out, and the letter, then when it came to him examining the letter, it said, I have enclosed, it was a letter to Guru Dasa, I have enclosed the specimen of the letter to so-and-so. I forget what it was. But it wasn't there. He said, why did you say you have enclosed the such and such when it's not there? I said, well, I looked for it in my files, and the files are they're not in good order now. I have so many things to do. I'm editing back to Godhead, and I'm still GBC of my zone, and I just got here, and I'm cooking for you, and I started to gush out. I'm so overloaded, and I have to cook, and nobody's helping me. And Pradyumna was supposed to help me cook, and nobody's helping me do anything. And he said, that's not the point. Why did you write in this letter that something's there and it's not there? And then I started to cry. And then I really started to cry, and I said, I guess it means because I don't love you enough, or something like that. I was like really going for what was really the real reason that I didn't do the thing right. So he just sat there and he waited for me to come up with something more than that. That wasn't good enough. That was just a sentiment. And then I said, I was just a crying mess, like a woman or something. And I said, I'll write him another letter and tell him that this letter was written wrong, and then I'll find the paper. I'll find the other paper. Do it, he said. Then I was dismissed, and I had to find that other paper. But to just leave him saying the paper is enclosed and it's not enclosed. So then I wrote him another letter and said why it wasn't enclosed. And I finally searched and found it. So he could crush me certainly easily. I was cutting some cucumbers, and he said, don't cut it that way. I was cutting it this way. He says, cut it that way. He said, you'll never get it right. He says, not in 300 years. I said, no, I won't. I'll learn to get it right. He said, no, you won't. And he's like, and I talked back, no, don't say that. And he said, no, you won't. You'll never learn, not in 300 years. I was just like, I just talked back. I didn't put any ginger on his breakfast plate. And he said, there's no ginger on the plate. And I said, oh, I'm sorry. And he said, oh, I'm sorry. Just like did an imitation of my insincerity. With the sarcasms of like just imitating my insincerity. It really could crush me. So it wouldn't take much, just a little inflection. And he had some names for me. He called me Dr. Isaac Newton. Because I was so impractical. He said that Dr. Isaac Newton was, although he was very brilliant, he was very impractical. He had a friend, and the friend saw that Dr. Isaac Newton was building 2 holes in his door. He said, "Why are you doing that?" He said, "I'm doing that to let my cats in the allow them to come in and out of the house. And I have 1 big cat and 1 small cat." His friend said, "Well, why don't you just build 1 hole and they both can come in and out of that hole?" So he said, just see, Dr. Isaac Newton was supposed to be a great scientist, but he was such a fool. So this was just an anecdote he told. And then he said, "So you students are like that." And then he called me, like, we went to the Hawaii beach side, and we all got out of the car, and boom, locked the car doors, and I left my bead bag in the car. And I said, "Oh, I left my beads in the car." And he just walked off, and he said, "Dr. Isaac Newton." So that was a nickname for me. And I didn't know whether to take it as a good name, that it showed that I was a brilliant man, or that I was just a complete fool. He wrote a letter, he said, "I keep you are not a good manager, but I keep you on the GBC because you always do what I say." So, well, you are a perfect gentleman. This was told to me. It wasn't written down, but when there was some corruption in New York City management, Polly Mardon and this woman and everything, Gopal Krishna suggested maybe I could become the person in charge. Prabhupada said no. He said, "Satsvarupa is a perfect gentleman, but he cannot manage." So there's always that theme and understanding by Prabhupada that I wasn't a good manager, but I was a perfect gentleman. So I liked his estimation of me. It was savvy, but it was sweet. They liked me. He thought that I did what he wanted to my capacity, but I really couldn't manage my way out of a paper bag. As far as some things that Prabhupada said about Gurukul, the teachers were always asking about discipline because they found it hard with all these untrained children to keep discipline. He said to try to tell them Krishna stories and engage them in Krishna Leela play, and they would be occupied. And the time would pass, they'd be happy. And academics should be restricted to just English and Sanskrit and a few studies, not much. One day, when he visited, he had they gave him some long rods, and everybody gleefully held their hands forward. He said, well, there can be punishment. Well, we hit you in the hands. Everyone was, wanted to be hit by Prabhupada. So he said, we can, if you do wrong, we can hit you in the hand. Everyone, the teachers and the children were pushing forward to be hit by Prabhupada. But he said that the teachers should never hit the children. If they do, they should be hit. Another thing was that should the school be a day school or should it be a boarding school? That's gone down in history to be in Vrindavan and Mayapur they're mostly boarding schools, but elsewhere it's seen to be that day schools are better, and that it was wrong in Dallas to have it a boarding school, to take children at such a young age and keep them under the care of such untrained teachers. It was the reason it was wrong. But I was in favor of having it at boarding school. And Mohanananda went to Prabhupada, and he said that he wanted it to be day school. And Prabhupada said, with great trust in me, saying, whatever he says is right, you do what he says. So he came back just, I have to do what you said. But it didn't work out. But it could have worked out if the teachers hadn't been such wrongdoers, or as the story goes, if they had been trained, but at least my memory is that that Prabhupada had sided with me in that question in a very personal way. Prabhupada favored the boarding school because they would be with the teachers all the time, getting in a Krishna conscious atmosphere, living in the temple. And learning by example of the teachers how to be devotees. They would go through the same temple program as a temple devotee, whereas if they just lived at home, there wouldn't be the same opportunity. It's like to live in the temple is better than living in the home, was the idea. How do we know after death that we'll take another body? And he said, well, the simple example Krishna gives is that in this life we change from young man to older man to old man, and then we die and take another body. I said, but that doesn't prove that we'll do it in the next life. It just proves it in this life. He says, no, he says it does, just like in a dream. And I said, no, that's just your faith. It's not actual proof. It's just an analogy. It's analogy. It doesn't actually prove that I'll become another person in another body. I just hang in there with the devil's advocate position. And then I realized, hey, I better cut this out. I don't want to keep arguing against my spiritual master. This finally rests on faith, and he would not stop his strong arguments on just based on Krishna and the Shastras. So I just finally would stop. I would concede, at least on that one, because to this day I think it's a matter of faith. That argument of how do you prove that there's another life? After death.
How do you know you're going to wake up from the dream?
At death, how do you know you'll wait?
But the analogy that Prabhupada gave was just like a dream, you were saying? That after you dream, you wake up and you're...
Well, there are two analogies. One is that we're changing bodies. So at the end of this life, we'll change bodies again.
So he kept hammering that was proof.
Yeah, that's proof. And I said, no, that's an analogy. It's a good analogy, but it's not proof that actually, when I die, I will take another body. He said, it is proof. And then he said, anyway, it's Krishna's authority. Then that would really be the most important thing, since Krishna says so. It's Krishna's authority. Then I would stop. He says, not just that it's analogy, it's Krishna's authority. Krishna says so, all the authorities say so. The soul is eternal, and after this body you take another body, because the soul doesn't die. Sometimes on morning walks, not just intellectual play, but you just really feel touched in your faith. Remember him saying, I am not blind. You to see God, you have to have somebody who's not blind. I am not blind. I can see God. You follow someone who's not blind, and we're just sloshing through the sand and made a turn and going the other way, and I just thought, wow. Prabhupada knows. He's not blind. He just said he's not blind. They're all blind. I know, he said, I am not blind. such gems, such blockbusters. Because I know, I'm not blind. Was it prima facie evidence? He carries that. Someone gave me a DVD about Ram Das, and they were talking about his guru, Guruji, and they showed a picture of him and his disciples. We were talking about that the one thing they said about him is that when you were with him, he made you feel love. He made you feel love for other people. So, but there was nothing about love of God. So Prabhupada made you feel love of God. And by such conviction, in an argument, philosophy, such a gigantic thing. And he was a great scholar of the Vedic literature. The quality that was most meaningful to me in Prabhupada was his love. He didn't always show it because he was the general on the battlefield and didn't have time. And some persons didn't really need it. Think of a person like Tamal Krishna Maharaj. He was ready to take the battle orders and fight. Of course, he needed love too, overt showing. But we all needed love. And I was just almost criticizing Ram Dasa's guru, but for only apparently having that quality. But Prabhupada's love with the ability to bring us back to Godhead. That's what I think he has, the potency to just kind of astounding love to. That's what we're counting on him to. I just read on the back of one of your books, a quote that he said, "I can guarantee you I'll bring you back to Godhead." So why does he do that on behalf of his Guru Maharaj, out of love? So he has love for the cow, love for all living entities, but even more for his disciples. And I think he wants us to come up to grade so that he can present us to Krishna. Please take these souls back. So I don't know how much of that I can claim I saw, but I have faith in it, that I did see it, and that's what he's offering us. That's why that's the value in remembering him, it's so important what you're doing in any remembering program. There's a cryptic note that Rupa Goswami sent to Sanatana Goswami when Sanatana was in jail. It goes like this: where has the Ayodhya of Raghupati gone? Where has the Mathura of Krishna gone? When you are in anxiety, keep the mind steady. It's cryptic because it's hard to understand what it means. But it means that the dhams on earth are deteriorating. Even they are. Vrindavan Dham. The dhams will always be there, but on earth they're deteriorating. But we should and Prabhupada memories can deteriorate. Even the remembrance that he was here and what his quality was. So we have to do this kind of thing. Remember him and speak about his qualities. So that we don't forget what he is in our life. Because so the importance that I just spoke was of his presence that we can remember is his ability to take us back to Godhead. And that I see, as I said, is his quality of his power as an empowered agent of Krishna, a loving agent, to do that. You go into the material world, you fit into disciplic succession, but in a very special way, and go. And I've been reading these New York diaries and the Jaladuta diaries. Go and bring all these souls back. And he's done it, or he's done a lot of it, and a lot of it has to be done by his followers. But by following his example. And part of it, what more can we do? We've flopped as trying to be gurus or trying to carry out any imitation of his presence, but remembrance in itself is a big thing. Just to remember how Prabhupada held a cup or did this or did that is a good thing. Asking all the devotees, what was he like, what did he do? So there's people in the future can remember that story you just told. Was wonderful. How did somebody ask Prabhupada, what did you feel when you chant? He said, I feel no fear. For anyone to hear that story and for them to keep it, they can also feel no fear. This is preaching. So I was just like walking off the gangplank when you asked me that question. I don't know what I was going to say. I felt like it was phony though. I said, well, here goes. The best quality I see in Prabhupada is, and I just started talking without knowing what I would say. But
you said love.
Love, yeah. That's what I need, is his love, because I need to be forgiven. And by his love, his charity, his leniency, and then I need that, we all need that that actual power that he has to be empowered Guru to be the one to release us. Not just Krishna at the time of death, but Prabhupada to say, what is it I make up a thing in my mind, that when I die, I'll say, call for Krishna. And they'll say, oh, whose disciple is he? Prabhupada. Oh, Prabhupada. Very famous guru. So ask Prabhupada, do you know this disciple? Satsvarupa? Well, what do you think of him? Where should he go next, or what is your recommendation for him? That's how it's. And what is he going? Is he going to save us all? One devotee was telling me that she felt that actually she had a real it was like a revelation that he's going to save every one of us. At our death, we have nothing to fear. Maybe that's true. You just have to remember him and love him back. Like I said, he said to me, if you love me, then I'll love you. So by disciples, I don't only mean those who got initiated by fire yogi, but all those who want to be his disciples. Can be his disciples. They can all be linked with him.
Ande Guru Sri Charanaravindam, Ande Guru Sri Charanaravindam, Ande Guru Sri Charanaravindam, Ande Guru Sri Charanaravindam, Ande Guru Sri Charanaravindam.